My name is Edith McGee Schrader. I was born March 4th, 1916 in Heber Springs, Arkansas. My parents were Jewel Elm and Thomas Arthur McGee. What else you want to know? My mother she was born in 1898. Mother said that when she was born, she was so little, her daddy carried her around in his pocket, and they made a shoebox for a bed for her. Well, I don't know, but that's what she always said. My grandmother and my mother and my Uncle John came from Missouri to Heber Springs in a wagon. My mother must have been around 12, said she picked flowers on the way. Mother and Daddy was married in 1915, January the 1st. My mother was 17 years old and my daddy was 30. They lived out on a farm on Heber Springs. They took Bill Lambert, who was my daddy's nephew, to raise. He was about, I guess, 10 years old. I'm not sure, maybe not that old. My sister Dorothy was born in 1918, October the 2nd, and Hattie was born May the 7th, 1921. Both were born in Heber Springs, Arkansas. They're both deceased. Hattie died in 1995, and Dorothy died in 2006. After Hattie was born, we moved from the farm to town, and my daddy went off to work in the oil field. There was one in Norfolk, Arkansas. We lived there for a while. Then we lived in Smackover, Arkansas for a while. And then we moved to El Dorado for a while. But the last time we moved was at Waterloo, where my daddy got a job in the refinery there. I finished Willisville High School in 1936. There was 9 in my graduating class, I believe. After I finished high school, after a while I came to Little Rock. I went to Drone's Business School for a while. I didn't really like it, but I went. I wanted to be a nurse, but my father put his foot down, which wasn't right, but he did. I worked as a waitress a while, and before that I worked in Prescott. And when I came to business school, I was supposed to work for my room and board, and the woman had 2 boys, and I had to take care of them. You imagine I couldn't study much. The war came on, I guess, in 1942. I was at home. It was on a Sunday around noon. My daddy had the radio on, and I heard that they'd bombed Pearl Harbor. And so Roosevelt, the president, declared war. And I got a job with the Corps of Engineers, working out at Marche, I think. At that time, mostly no women hardly worked for the Corps of Engineers. And then I transferred from there to Newport, Arkansas. They built an air base up there where they trained pilots. And that was the first time I ever saw your grandfather Fred. They hired him, he was a concrete man, one of the best, they said, to come in and help pour concrete on that air base. When I worked up there, we were like one big happy family, and they had a lot of boys, young men up there training right out of high school, a lot of them. We did everything. We even took fingerprints of people because they had to hire a lot of people. We just did what we had to do. Then I went transferred from there to Walnut Ridge. I just worked in the office up Walnut Ridge, and I came back to Little Rock and worked here for the Corps of Engineers for a long time. And then the men started coming back from the service. Oh, I went to work at Pittsburgh Plate Glass, which I didn't like. And I lived at Lou Parrish's, and your grandfather came there to live. They were paving Main Street, I think. I started going with him some, but not all the time. I was busy dating all these good-looking soldier boys. I had a friend out in California, a girlfriend, and I decided to go to California to visit her on a vacation. I rode a Greyhound bus from Little Rock to California, and we had the best bus driver. He stopped, let us take pictures and everything. And I went out there and visited her a while. I worked down with this girl. Her name was Claire Worthen. The war was over. Boys were coming home. Claire said, I got a brother that's coming home. He said, he doesn't know any girls. So I said, well, I've got a sister that doesn't know any boys either. So Claire and I introduced Hattie and Bill. So they started going together. They got married in 1947, I believe. She got pregnant. Their baby was premature and it died. They didn't have any more children. Dorothy and Merritt got married in 1946. And then I started going with Fred again, so in 1950 we got married. So he died in 1980, so we were married about 30 years. Then we had 2 boys, and we lived over on Markham Street. And then we moved out here. We were out in the country. Merritt and Dorothy lived up in that brick house up there on the east side of me. And they had a daughter named Suzanne, and she was older than my boys. Suzanne was the boss. I think as Bob, she used to dress up like a girl. They grew up out here together like brothers and sisters instead of cousins. They had their squabbles like all children do. We got along with Merritt and them. As long as everybody keeps out of everybody's business, you can get along. The boys grew up out here. We had a dog, and they played out in the yard. Went to school over David O'Dodd. Became Boy Scouts, and they became Eagle Scouts. I guess they enjoyed growing up out here, I don't know. And then Suzanne grew up. She went to this girls' school down in New Orleans, and she came back and went to Hendrix College. And she married Richard Ganaway. And she had 4 children. Elizabeth, the oldest. Elizabeth lives in California. John Cullen lives in Florida. Philip lives up in New Jersey. And Caitlin lives in Oregon. Suzanne took MS before Caitlin was born. She was bedfast her last years, but she had her own mind. She knew everything, but she just couldn't get up and walk. And she died February the 18th in 2007. She died after Dorothy did, her mother. Jim graduated from high school in 1969, and he went off to West Point. Actually, I didn't want him to go, but he went. He wanted to go, so that's it. And when he graduated, he was going by Sharon then, and Bob and Sharon and Jim and Fred and Dorothy and I all went up to see him graduate. Bob graduated in 1970, and he went up to the University of Arkansas. He was 17 years old, and I'll never forget this lady said, well, I wouldn't let my son go up to the University of Arkansas. And he got a degree in agri-engineering. Then he got a master's degree in environmental engineering. And he went to work for the Corps of Engineers here in Little Rock, and a flyer came through one day asking about going up to Washington to work. He just happened to answer it, and that's how he got up to Washington. They didn't either one go to Vietnam. A lot of boys around here did, but they didn't go. So I was concerned, like all the other mothers were, about their boys going off to war. Jim was up at school at West Point. They wouldn't draft him, and they didn't draft Bob. His draft was moved up because he had such good grades. Jim and Sharon got married, and I think they went to live in Germany. They came home and she got pregnant with James Robert. He was born in May the 14th, and my husband, Fred, was sick. He had cancer of the liver, and we knew he wasn't going to live long. That's the reason Jim transferred back here. And I used to rock James Robert and rock him and rock him. They lived in Conway until he got sent to Korea. Sharon was pregnant with Kathy, and she was born on the 27th of January, and I heard about it the 26th. I went over there to see him. Kathy was so cute, she crawled around. Bob got married. He married Carol in 1986, I believe. And they got married up in South Bend, Indiana, at Suzanne's house. Bob got transferred up to Washington. They had tried to adopt some children. When they got transferred to Washington, they adopted Riley right out of the hospital. And Riley, 7 years old when they got Chelsea. Riley has finished school and has a job, and Chelsea is in the 9th grade in school, and they live in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And that's about all I know.